The cub stepped out of the shadows, its small body low to the ground, muscles coiled like springs as its eyes scanned every movement around it. The grass whispered under the gentle wind, carrying scents that twisted through the air. The humans in the clearing froze, unsure of whether to move closer or retreat. The cub sniffed lightly, its nose twitching at the unfamiliar smells of sweat and leather and strange metal. The sunlight fell in patches through the canopy, highlighting the tips of its fur, making it look like it shimmered with energy. Every twitch of its ears and flick of its tail was an announcement that it was aware, that it was alive and alert. It paused to listen to the sound of a distant bird and the soft crack of a branch underfoot and the faint whisper of voices behind the trees. Yet it was the figure in front of it that captured its attention. The trainer knelt, slowly holding a treat in one hand. The cub tilted its head to the side, eyes narrowing slightly as it gauged the movement, gauged the threat, gauged the promise of something new. The humans behind the trainer murmured in low tones, and the cub flinched at their sudden breath of noise. It crouched a little lower, tail flicking once, twice as if warning the invisible air around it that it could spring in an instant. The trainer extended a hand slowly, and the cub sniffed at it, its nose brushing the human fingers lightly before it batted at the hand playfully, yet with claws barely restrained enough to warn the onlookers. The trainer smiled and whispered words that were soft and careful. The cub listened, tilting its ears forward and backward, flicking them as it tried to decipher the strange cadence of sound. The trainer shifted weight to one knee and then the other. The cub mirrored the motion instinctively, its body tight and fluid, a predator testing the air, testing the earth, testing the rhythm of something it had never known but had already recognized as a presence. It watched the human blink and blink again, a subtle twitch of muscle in the jaw, and the cub's eyes glimmered with interest. It took a slow step forward, and then another, its claws clicking faintly on the packed earth. The trainer did not flinch, but the humans in the background pressed closer together, whispering questions. The cub sniffed the ground, and then the trainer's boots flicking, its tail behind it like a pendulum, counting the beats of hesitation and curiosity. The wind shifted, carrying a hint of smoke from a distant fire. The cub's ears twitched sharply. It glanced toward the horizon, then back at the trainer, as if calculating escape routes, calculating whether trust was possible, calculating whether play could turn to danger. In a single instant, the trainer moved the treat closer to the ground, and the cub crouched lower still, muscles coiled, ready to spring. The sun caught its eyes glinting gold and amber, and the humans collectively held their breath. The cub leapt just slightly, brushing the trainer's hand, its claws touching lightly, a warning, a test, a bridge of instinct and curiosity that could fall apart in a heartbeat. The trainer froze, smiling softly, whispering words the cub did not yet understand, and then it stepped back, shaking its head slightly as if marking the moment in memory, recording the scent, the warmth, the tension, the heartbeat of the human before it paused, finally sitting on its haunches, tail curling around its paws, eyes never leaving the trainer, as if acknowledging the strange, fragile beginning of something that could be trust or something that could be discovered. Morning air was thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth as the cub padded silently toward the trainer, its movements fluid and cautious yet brimming with restless energy. Each step pressed the leaves softly beneath its paws as if testing the ground for hidden dangers. The trainer knelt once again, offering a small piece of meat. The cub's nose twitched, catching the scent as it crouched low, its tail flicking side to side like a pendulum, marking its internal calculation. The humans behind the fence whispered among themselves, and the cub paused, its ears flicking sharply at every sound, its eyes narrowing as it gauged the distance between itself and the prize. The trainer extended the meat slowly closer to the cub, its fingers trembling slightly, not from fear but from anticipation of the first real test. The cub sniffed the air, tentatively leaning forward, then jerking back, suddenly its claws scraping the packed dirt lightly, making a faint clicking sound that drew the attention of everyone nearby. The trainer whispered softly words that were calm but insistent. The cub tilted its head and pawed at the earth, scratching lightly as if considering the offer. It shifted weight from one paw to the other, muscles tensing in a coiled rhythm, ready to spring forward or retreat at the slightest signal of danger. A sudden rustle of leaves from the humans behind the fence made the cub's fur rise, its body flattened low to the ground, and its eyes glimmered like amber in the dappled sunlight. It leapt forward in a quick burst, brushing the trainer's hand, claws touching the meat but not breaking the skin, as if testing its strength against the human's patience. The trainer did not pull back, instead murmuring encouragement. The cub hesitated a heartbeat and then lunged again, teeth barely missing the fingers, and the humans gasped. The cub froze midair for a fraction of a second, tail swishing rapidly, eyes wide and ears pinned slightly back as if unsure if it had done something wrong or magnificent. The trainer moved slowly forward, offering the meat again. The cub crouched low, pawing the dirt and its nose brushing against the trainer's boots, testing the scent, testing the heat of life in the human. The wind shifted, carrying a sharp tang of smoke from a distant fire. The cub paused, sniffing at the air before returning, its gaze to the trainer, muscles coiled, ready to explode with movement yet tempered by curiosity. The humans behind the fence leaned closer, whispering questions about the cub's nature, about whether it would obey or attack. The cub tilted its head once, then twice, calculating the risk and reward, its claws scraping lightly across the stones hidden beneath leaves. Its body hummed with tension and anticipation, and in a sudden blur it lunged, snapping playfully at the meat, snapping slightly at the air, brushing the trainer's fingers with teeth, yet careful enough not to pierce the skin. The trainer laughed softly, a sound that was both relief and encouragement. The cub stepped back, then forward, pawing at the earth, its tail flicking and eyes glinting gold and green as it tried to understand the strange, fragile trust forming in the moment. Each movement was a test, each glance a conversation between predator and trainer, unspoken, but charged with electric energy. And the humans watched, holding their collective breath as the cub crouched once again, ready to leap, again ready to obey or defy, ready to explore the thin line between instinct and obedience. In the quiet morning that smelled of wet leaves and tension and possibility, days blurred together, and the cub began to move through the training grounds like a shadow, its small body swift and silent paws barely leaving marks on the dirt and grass. The trainer moved among the obstacles slowly and deliberately, the cub following behind or circling ahead, its eyes never leaving the human, as if tracking every heartbeat, every flicker of muscle. More mornings were misty with dew clinging to fur and leaves, and the cub's nose twitched, constantly catching scents of other animals, and the faint smell of humans far beyond the fences. It crouched low and darted forward, sometimes brushing against the trainer's legs with claws retracted in a gesture that was both playful and testing. The trainer knelt and extended a hand toward the cub, its fingers hovering just above the ground. The cub sniffed and tapped gently with its nose before leaping back. Suddenly, ears flattened in excitement or warning. The humans observing whispered low and tense voices, creating a soft backdrop to the rhythm of the cub's movements. The cub darted through the trees, sometimes pausing to watch birds flutter above or the distant movement of deer. It was quick and fluid, muscles rippling under fur, golden eyes catching every motion in the shifting light. The trainer clapped softly, a signal for attention, and the cub froze, ears pricked. It padded forward, slow, deliberate steps, circling and weaving as if performing an unspoken ritual of evaluation and acknowledgement. Its tail flicked and twitched with emotion, its teeth occasionally glinting in the sunlight as it yawned, stretching powerful jaws. The cub paused at a fallen log, sniffing the underside, then leaping over it with effortless grace. The trainer followed at a careful pace, offering soft words. The cub glanced back, eyes gleaming like molten gold, measuring the distance between instinct and obedience. The humans whispered speculation about the bond forming, whether it was trust or simple curiosity, and the cub seemed to sense their presence, flicking ears toward the sounds before resuming focus on the trainer. Its claws dug slightly into soft earth, paws moving like liquid shadow through the underbrush. The sun rose higher, burning away mist and warming fur and skin, and the cub rolled slightly on its back, paws kicking at leaves as the trainer laughed softly, a sound that mingled with the rustling trees and distant cries of animals. It jumped up suddenly, ears pinned, eyes sharp, as it darted toward a tree branch, sniffing around and then back at the trainer in a pattern of exploration and test. Its movements were unpredictable yet somehow calculated, every twitch of a paw, every tilt of the head a signal of awareness and intelligence that made the humans behind the fence lean closer, their breaths held in anticipation. The cub brushed against the trainer's legs, then darted forward again, crouching low and pouncing at imaginary prey in a silent, playful hunt. Its eyes glimmered with mischief and the instinct. The trainer smiled and whispered words the cub did not yet understand, but that carried a tone of encouragement and patience. The morning stretched endlessly, filled with motion and sound and scent, and the cub moved in and out of the shadows, testing boundaries, learning rules, and discovering the strange, fragile trust that seemed to pulse between predator and human. as if both creatures were dancing to a rhythm known only to them. The day was hotter than usual and the air shimmered. Above the dirt and stones the cub prowled through the training grounds, muscles coiled and eyes sharp, scanning every movement of the trainer in the surrounding trees. Its tail flicked once, twice as it padded forward low to the ground, paused silent, except for the faint whisper of dirt and leaves brushing under claws. The trainer raised a hand signaling the cub to come closer, and the cub hesitated, crouching low, its body trembling with restrained energy. It stepped forward, pawing at the dirt lightly, then retreated suddenly, ears flattening and eyes narrowing at a sudden rustle in the underbrush. The humans behind the fence leaned forward, their eyes wide and breaths shallow, watching the tension in every twitch of the cub's muscles. The trainer knelt slowly, speaking soft words the cub did not understand but recognized as rhythm and pattern. It tilted its head and pawed at the ground, brushing lightly against the trainer's boots. Testing distance and obedience, the trainer clapped softly a signal, and the cub crouched lower, coiling like a spring ready to explode or retreat in the blink of an eye. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and distant smoke. The cub sniffed sharply, ears flicking forward and back, gauging danger and opportunity. Its muscles tensed in sudden anticipation, and then it leaped forward, brushing against the trainer's hand. Claws grazing the skin slightly, but not enough to pierce. The trainer flinched and whispered softly words of caution. The cub paused, eyes wide, teeth flashing in a brief snarl. The humans whispered anxiously, predicting disaster, yet the cub circled and leaped again, more aggressively, testing the human's patience and strength. Its tail lashed behind it like a whip, the air vibrating with energy and instinct. Each movement was precise, controlled, yet wild, a predator, measuring limits and rules. The trainer shifted weight deliberately to one knee, then the other, keeping voice calm but firm. The cub froze its body, a taut wire ready to spring. It lunged suddenly, snapping at the trainer's arm, brushing teeth against skin in a playful test of courage and strength, but with claws barely retracted enough to show warning. The trainer laughed, nervously, soft words trailing across the clearing, and the cub paused, tail flicking, ears twitching, glancing briefly at the humans behind the fence as if daring them to intervene. Its eyes gleamed molten gold and green, reflecting sunlight and movement around the clearing. The cub crouched low to the ground, suddenly lunging with a burst of power, knocking the trainer off balance. The humans gasped. The trainer barely caught themselves, murmuring softly, while the cub paused mid-dur, muscles quivering, ears flattened, body tense, unsure if the attack had gone too far or been accepted. The cub circled slowly, whining low in the throat, testing the reaction of the trainer. Its paws scratching lightly at dirt, eyes flicking between aggression and curiosity. The trainer steadied, breathing, speaking soft words that carried a mixture of warning and reassurance. The cub hesitated, leaning in, sniffing the trainer's arm before bounding back. Suddenly a flash of teeth, a flick of tail, and then pausing again, watching for the slightest change in expression or tone. Its instincts were sharp, its mind quick, its body a blur of potential and energy, as the humans continued to hold their collective breath, waiting for the moment when the playful challenge might tip into something uncontrollable. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the cub crouched low, its body coiled like a spring, muscles rippling under golden fur. Its eyes locked on the trainer, calculating every movement, every breath, and every twitch of the fingers the trainer held. Still speaking soft words of encouragement mixed with caution, the cub tilted its head, ears flicking back and forth, gauging tone and intent. The humans behind the fence pressed closer, their eyes wide with fear and fascination, unsure if what was about to happen could be controlled. The cub pawed lightly at the dirt, testing distance, then leaped forward, brushing teeth and claws against the trainer's arm, a warning, a play, a question in instinctual language. The trainer flinched slightly but did not pull away, murmuring softly, and the cub paused, tail flicking nervously, its ears flattening low as a sudden spark of confusion surged through its mind. It stepped back, then forward, then leaped again. Claws extended briefly in a quick arc, brushing against clothing, brushing against skin, but the eyes of the cub were different now, wide and molten, the amber and gold of predatory calculation meeting a strange mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of smoke and wet earth. The cub sniffed sharply and ears pricked suddenly without warning. Its body moved faster than thought, lashing claws forward, snapping teeth in a blur of movement, and the trainer could not react quickly enough. The moment was lightning sharp, a flash, a twist, a turn. The neck broke in a heartbeat. The cub froze mid-air, ears flattened, eyes wide, whiskers trembling as if shocked by its own strength. The humans behind the fence cried out, some gasping, others stepping back in horror. The forest seemed to echo the sudden silence that followed. The cub stumbled slightly back, paws scraping the dirt, tail lashing nervously, its small body trembling. It whined a low, mournful sound, almost like a question, its head tilted slightly, unsure if what it had done was accepted or condemned. Its eyes flicked to the trainer lying motionless, the scowl forming slowly across the human's face as if disappointment had carved itself into flesh. The cub took a hesitant step closer, pawing lightly at the chest, sniffing at the scent of life or lack of it, ears twitching anxiously, tail curling uncertainly around its paws. It circled slowly, whining softly, nudging the human's arm again and again, each motion a desperate attempt to understand the reaction of the one it had followed and tested for days. The humans rushed in behind barriers, shouting orders, but the cub froze, ears pricked, eyes glinting golden green, calculating escape and consequence. Its instincts were raw, its mind sharp, its body coiled and trembling with both fear and confusion. The trainer's eyes narrowed slightly, the scowl cutting through the haze of pain and surprise. The cub stopped pawing and whined louder, tilting its head as if asking for forgiveness for the instinct it could not control. The forest held a tense quiet as the cub remained crouched, unsure, breathing fast, whiskers quivering, tail flicking nervously, waiting for the verdict of the one it had chosen to follow and test for trust and understanding. The clearing was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves and the low whine of the cub, its small body crouched close to the dirt, tail curling tightly around its paws, ears flattened back against its skull. Its golden eyes flicked nervously to the trainer lying still for a moment before a slow scowl formed across the face. A scowl not of anger but of deep disappointment that cut sharper than any roar or strike. The cub froze, every muscle coiled and trembling as if the air itself had become heavy with judgment. Its whiskers twitched and its tail flicked once, twice, nervously pawing lightly at the dirt in a hesitant gesture that seemed to ask a question it could not form in words. The humans behind the fence held their breaths, some shifting uneasily, others gripping the barriers, their eyes wide at the tension hanging between predator and human. The trainer shifted slightly, raising a hand slowly enough to not provoke further instinct. The scowl deepening as eyes narrowed. The cub tilted its head, pawing once more, then backing, slightly unsure if proximity was safe or forbidden. Its ears flicked toward every sound, a snapping twig, a falling leaf, the whisper of wind, carrying scents of wet earth, smoke, and distant animals. The cub circled slowly, pawing at the ground, softly whining, a low, mournful sound, almost like a plea, trying to understand the unspoken language of disappointment. The trainer's voice remained silent, the scowl deepening like a shadow over the clearing. The humans whispering softly in awe and fear, observing the fragile balance. The cub's body quivered, muscles tight as it approached, cautiously pawing again, brushing lightly against the trainer's arm, testing the reaction, measuring the intensity of the gaze it had once sought approval from, now tainted with judgment. Its eyes glistened gold and green, reflecting sunlight flickering through leaves. It tilted its head again, tail flicking nervously as if trying to offer something it could not name. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when instinct might again erupt or when understanding might settle over the tension like a veil. The cub inched closer, sniffing the air, brushing the ground carefully, listening to every heartbeat, every shallow breath, every subtle twitch of muscle in the trainer's chest. The scowl did not soften and the cub froze for a heartbeat, pawing once, twice, ears twitching, then whining low, the sound carrying both fear and desire. To repair what instinct had broken, the humans behind the fence shuffled uneasily, murmuring about training instincts and consequences. The cub's ears flicking at every word but remaining focused entirely on the scowl and the human it had come to follow. The air was heavy with unspoken words, the cub circling closer, then retreating, pawing again, low, whining every movement. A desperate negotiation between instinct and comprehension, between predator and human, between trust earned and trust fractured. The trainer's eyes narrowed slightly more, the scowl deepening, and the cub froze mid-step, tail flicking, ears flattened, body trembling, whispers, quivering, heart pounding, trying to understand the meaning of this expression and how it could navigate a world where strength and affection collided in a single glance. The cub circled slowly, its body low to the ground, tail flicking nervously, ears flattened back against its skull, eyes wide and molten as it tried to make sense of the scowl it had never seen before. Its paws scraped lightly at the dirt, testing distance, sniffing faintly at the air as if hoping the scent of reassurance might drift from the trainer. It tilted its head once, then twice, whining softly, a low, mournful sound carrying confusion and desperation all at once. The humans behind the fence whispered nervously, some pressing faces close, others stepping back at the uncertainty of what might come next. The cub paused, suddenly crouched low, muscles coiled like springs, ready to leap or retreat, ears twitching at every sound of movement, of wind, of distant birds. Its golden eyes reflected sunlight in shards. Glinting with anxiety and curiosity, it pawed again, nudging lightly at the trainer's arm, brushing claws lightly against clothing, just enough to seek contact without causing harm. Its tail curled tighter around its body, flicking nervously as it inched forward, whiskers quivering, every movement a question in instinctual language. The trainer remained still, the scowl etched deeply on the face, a mix of disappointment and shyness. The cub sniffed cautiously, inhaling the scent of sweat and warmth and fear, trying to understand whether it had done something unforgivable or merely misunderstood. The wind carried faint smells of smoke and damp leaves. The cub paused, sniffing sharply, ears pricked forward, then back, tail flicking once more, as if to gauge the reaction of everything around it, including the humans observing behind the fence. Its body trembled slightly, pawing again, nudging closer, then circling the trainer in a slow, cautious dance, whining low, the sound vibrating through the clearing. It tilted its head, trying to read the expression, trying to reconcile the instinct that had broken the neck with the presence of the scowl that cut sharper than teeth or claws. Its eyes glimmered gold and green, flickering with tension and longing, paws scraping softly at the earth, and the trainer's boots brushing lightly against the fur as if testing proximity without permission. The humans whispered about trust, instincts, and danger, but the cub ignored them entirely, focused on the one figure who had been both guide and challenge. Its tail flicked nervously, paws pawing lightly, nudging again, sniffing the air and brushing lightly against the trainer's arm once more, whining low, each movement a plea, a question, a silent apology for what instinct had forced, and a request for understanding. The cub paused, finally sitting back on its haunches, tail curled around its paws, ears flattened but eyes wide, watching the scowl like a puzzle it could not yet solve. It pawed once, twice more, hesitating, sniffing carefully before inching forward, nudging again, its whiskers brushing against clothing, almost as if to say, I am here, I do not understand, but I wish to repair what I have broken. Its low whine carried across the clearing, the trees still, the birds silent as if holding their own breath in anticipation. The cub circled one final time, crouched low and pawed again, pushing gently at the trainer, testing for response, trying to measure if forgiveness or acceptance could be earned in the language of movement, of scent, of quiet presence, waiting desperately for a flicker of softening in the eyes that might signal the end of fear and the beginning of understanding. The alarms screamed through the corridor, a rising metallic wail that made every living thing in the compound flinch. The doors burst open and light poured into the training chamber, so bright it painted the walls white. The cub blinked against it, pupils narrowing, breath, ragged chest heaving, its claws twitching against the floor, slick and red. The sound of boots echoed heavy and uneven as the team rushed in, shouting commands at one another. Their rifles raised, trembling, not from fear of disobedience but from knowing that one wrong move might turn the air into chaos again. The cub did not move, it only turned its head toward the sound of the door, its body lowered to the ground, its tail drawn close, ears flat, its gaze wild and lost. And then through the parting bodies came Dr. Harlow, her face pale under the harsh lights, her steps slow and deliberate, her expression unreadable. She did not look at the guards or the blood, she looked only at the cub, as if there was no one else in the room. The cub made a sound, then small and raw from deep within its chest, a sound not meant for words but for something older. It crawled forward just a few inches, its claws clicking softly against the concrete, its eyes searching for recognition, for mercy, for the rhythm of her voice that always came before food or warmth or calm. But she said nothing, not yet. She only stood there, the air between them thick with the smell of iron and disinfectant, and something that felt heavier than grief. Fagard spoke low, asking if he should fire, and Harlow raised her hand to silence him, her gaze never leaving the creature. She took another step forward, the click of her heels sharp against the echoing floor, and the cub whimpered again, the sound of a storm collapsing in on itself. It pressed its muzzle to the ground, a motion it had learned meant submission, meant please do not be angry, please do not turn away. Harlow stopped within reach, her eyes reflected in the cub's trembling pupils, two small lights in a world gone dim. She could see the tremor in its shoulders, the pulse of its heart Beneath the fur she could see the place where instinct had shattered obedience. She could almost hear Marcus's voice telling her the cub was ready, that it had learned that it was safe, and she felt a cold rage bloom inside her, a rage not at the creature but at herself for believing in something so foolish as control. The cub reached toward her. One paw extended, slow, hesitant, its claws retracted. It made another sound that shook like a question. She looked down at that small gesture, and for a moment she wanted to reach back, to close the distance, to say something that might undo what had happened, but the words never came, because the truth was heavier than any command. Alarm still blared, the guards still waited, the smell of blood still lingered, and yet in that suspended silence between two breaths, it was as if the world had shrunk to the space between a scientist and the thing. She'd made a living merit that wanted her forgiveness but would never understand why it could not have it. The cub lowered its head as if the weight of her silence pressed down harder than any cage it had ever known. Its breath came slow, uneven, the floor beneath it sticky and cold. The lights flickered once and the guards shifted, but none dared move. The air was heavy with waiting, the kind that stretched seconds into something endless. Dr. Harlow stood still, her shadow trembling on the wall like a separate being, her hands clenched at her sides, her throat tight with words that refused to exist. She had built this creature, shaped it from numbers and flesh, taught it to trust the sound of human breath, to believe in touch and tone, and now it stared up at her with eyes that asked where. The cub took another small breath, its body folding in on itself, the great shoulders quivering, as if something inside had broken loose. Its muscles twitched, memories flashing behind its gaze. Marcus's voice, soft, the sound of his laughter. The rhythm of footsteps during feeding, the brush of his hand against its fur, the moments that were small and safe before instinct and fear tore through the fragile line between man and beast. It made a sound again, low, desperate, a sound that echoed off the walls like morning. Dar Harlow wanted to look away but could not. Her mind, a storm of facts and failures. She saw not a monster but a child of her own, making every test, every reinforcement, every whisper of hope that maybe the wild could be bent without breaking. She stepped closer, the guards shifted again, their rifles shaking under the strain of their own nerves, but she ignored them. She looked into the creature's eyes and saw something that hurt more than any wound. She saw confusion and sorrow at the beginning of awareness. The cub moved slightly, pressing its head against the floor as if begging for her to speak, the sound of its breath shallow, trembling, its body curling inward. It could smell her scent beneath the harsh chemicals and the blood that clung to everything. It wanted that scent to mean safety again, but her face stayed cold, her eyes wet but unblinking. And when she finally spoke, her voice came out, small, barely human. She said, "Enough." That single word struck harder than a weapon. The cub froze, its ears twitching. It made another whine, softer this time, and then it stopped moving entirely. The muscles locked, the sound fading from its throat, its eyes wide, fixed on her as if still searching for something in the silence, something that would tell it the world was not broken. Harlow exhaled a breath she did not know she had been holding, and the alarms finally cut off, leaving behind an echo that clung to the bones of the place. She turned her back on the creature, the guards, moving forward uncertain, their steps hesitant, their faces pale. The cub did not resist, it simply stayed, their eyes open, chest rising and falling slower and slower until even that motion was gone. And in that still room where human ambition had collided with the last spark of innocence, the only sound that remained was the quiet hum of the lights and the ghost of a whine that would never fade.